What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we are going over the running back rankings. This is going to be for half PPR, and we're diving into the third tier. We've already done the first two tiers of running back, which covered the first 13 players. In this third tier, we are talking about the running back 14 through the running back 22. Obviously, we have plenty of players to go over in this video, so we're not going to go super in depth with each player, but by the end of it, you'll have a good understanding of how we feel about each player. Before we do get into the video though, stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was which wide receiver ranked dead last in average yards after catch over expectation. The correct answer was Brashad Perriman. Unfortunately, nobody at the time of recording has answered correctly yet. As for today's stat of the day, we're transitioning from a player who struggled in this area to a player who excelled. Which tight end led the league in average yards after catch over expectation? Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Also, guys, these are just a few players picked out of our rankings. Our rankings could obviously change with all the craziness going around the league. One news blurb could impact our rankings significantly, so if you want to stay fully up to date, consider signing up for our draft package. Not only will you have access to our rankings, sleepers, targets, busts, but you'll get access to the player breakdowns, you'll have access all season, and quite frankly, it's a really insane bang for the buck. With that out of the way though, let's hop right into the video. Coming in at running back 14 is Aaron Jones. Yes, it may seem a little bit low considering that he did finish as the running back 2 last season. So that may be a bit shocking, but there are a few things we need to unpack, the first thing being health. Well, last season was Aaron Jones' third year in the league, but it was only his first season that he was ever healthy for the whole year. So when doing his risk assessment, you do have to increase his risk. The second item was his insane touchdown efficiency from a season ago, coupled with his lack of volume. Aaron Jones ranked 15th in rush attempts last season, 14th in receptions, which doesn't quite jive well with his fantasy finish of RB2. He did manage to compile over 1,400 total yards from scrimmage, but that still wouldn't be enough production to warrant a top 12 grade. The touchdowns, he led the league with 16 on the ground, notched in an additional 3 in the receiving game, which ranked 8th, also a high conversion rate. So overall, you definitely have a player who, in order to repeat the same type of success, would need a lot to go in his favor. With that being said, where we currently have him ranked is still a pretty fair spot for you to land what he can provide for your team this season. This organization, while it is heading towards being a bit of a disaster, they don't have Funchess anymore. They added no weapons in the receiving game through the draft. Aaron Jones is probably going to be heavily utilized as long as he's healthy, and this is an offense that can still be efficient in the red zone. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best red zone passers in the league. While that won't directly help Aaron Jones in his ability to rush in the ball in the red zone, the overall efficiency will still help him in potentially exceeding what is expected. RB15 is Todd Gurley, and it's definitely a pick I'm liking more and more. We do have him listed as a target, and if you really read between the lines, there are a lot of signs pointing to him potentially having a strong bounce back season. One thing to keep in mind is Todd Gurley is a Georgia boy. Going to Atlanta, it's basically like home field advantage for him. He's going to have a lot of people hoping for his success. This is a team that wanted him, and it's also a team that Todd Gurley presumably took less money in order to play for. He's not even paid within the top 30 running backs on a 1-year deal, which means all signs point to him betting on himself for this season. It's also an offense that passes a ton to the running back position, an area he really didn't get all that much volume in last season, but was a very big staple of his game the first few seasons he entered the league. While his knees are definitely a concern and do boost the level of risk you're taking on when drafting him, it's much more of a concern in dynasty leagues, and even with the risk assumed from drafting a player with arthritis in their knees, it still doesn't quantify where his ADP currently is, which does indicate that there is a bit of recency bias playing into that ADP. Targeting players that are impacted by recency bias is one way to get value in the draft. RB16 is James Conner. We cannot forget that heading into last season, this was a player on the borderline of a top 5 running back. I understand that we don't know how recovered Big Ben is heading into this season, but it's 100% an upgrade over what they had last season, so we shouldn't hold his poor 2019 efficiency against him from what we could expect for him this upcoming year. The main concern is definitely going to be his health. While healthy, he is going to lead this backfield. How long he can stay healthy is another question. Me personally, I have high expectations for James Conner due to coupling a talented player who's very versatile in the passing game as well on a team with one of the best defenses in the entire league, led by a quarterback who is 1 year removed from a 5,000 yard passing season. To me, all signs point to a strong value pick, but definitely one that comes with a bit of risk due to the inherent injury concerns, and it's also a player who did battle with cancer, which I have seen people using as a reason for opting out of the season. Chris Carson comes in as RB17th, and I'm loving the value where we currently have him ranked. Yes, he does come with a bit of injury concern like a lot of the running backs in this range, but he's also a player who ranked 5th in rush attempts last season on an offense led by Russell Wilson with virtually no competition behind him. Yes, there's Carlos Hyde. Rashad Penny is still on the team as well and is a first-round talent, but his injuries have held him back throughout his entire career, and there's a chance Rashad Penny starts the season on the pup. As for Chris Carson, he is destined to lead this backfield, at least initially. While he's healthy and leading this backfield, we can easily expect RB1 numbers, not as heavily utilized in the receiving game as we would like, but that does not mean his production in this area will be non-existent. If Carson is able to fend off the competition behind him, clean up some of the fumbling issues we saw last year, there is no doubt in my mind that Chris Carson will finish as a top 12 RB and could even push for top 8 upside. RB18 is Jonathan Taylor, one of the best prospects we have seen in a long time, most comparable to Ezekiel Elliott, but I'd say as a prospect, potential-wise, I'd say comparable to Saquon Barkley. This is definitely a player who could really come out and make a statement. It's almost crazy to think this type of prospect landed on a team with such an amazing offensive line, headlined by Pro Bowler Quentin Nelson, and the only real competition he has for snaps and touches is going to come at the expense of Marlon Mack. Now, I understand people are fans of Marlon Mack based on what he was able to do for your team last season, but Mack is not a very talented running back. It may break your heart to hear that, but this was a 3.7 yards per carry rusher before the addition of the aforementioned Quentin Nelson in the 2018 draft. Marlon Mack was nothing special in 2017. Jonathan Taylor, he will be able to separate himself. The only main question is how long is that going to take? What are the splits going to be like? And how much use is this player going to be getting in the receiving game? Now, I definitely believe his production will be more based on first and second down, as well as short yardage and goal line, but that will not hinder him from having some level of usage in the receiving game. Think Melvin Gordon, when he entered the league, his career high for a single season in receptions in college was 19 receptions. Jonathan Taylor didn't have heavy usage in the passing game, not a strong suit, but Phillip Rivers, much like he ended up throwing the ball to Melvin Gordon, similar opportunities will be available for Jonathan Taylor as long as he can produce, so we cannot lower him in the rankings for that reason, and just due to the upside of how successful this team should be this year, the quarterback that they have, and how good the offensive line is, it's a pick that comes with a massive amount of upside. Now, how ironic is it? Melvin Gordon is up next, running back 19. The pick here is pretty simple. Understandably, he does have some competition behind him that is capable. Prior to Melvin Gordon being signed to the team, even taking the combination of Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay would still actually rank inside the top half of backfields when it comes to talent. But now, insert Melvin Gordon, which definitely bolsters the overall security of the strength of this backfield for this team. But as for individual production, the high end of that may be capped from a volume perspective. Regardless, running back 19 is a very fair projection for him. It's a team that has an inexperienced quarterback with plenty of upside. The inexperience does open up more opportunities for the team to rely on the run game, and the potential of Drew Lock is a factor that increases the ceiling of Melvin Gordon. Couple that with an underrated defense that's still one of the better defenses in the league, and you have a player who has a skill set to do it all, both rushing and receiving, on a team that should not be game scripted out of contests, that is almost guaranteed to be featured in the red zone, and the team has a very heavy financial investment in him, which will guarantee him playtime. All those factors, it's hard to imagine him not finishing around RB19 or better, even despite maybe not ranking so high in the volume area. So for us, we definitely feel comfortable targeting Melvin Gordon, and we feel strongly that RB19 is a really good range for him to go. RB20 is David Johnson, and this is a player I've had mixed feelings about. For starters, the team did invest heavily in getting him on the team, also gave up a lot in order to do so, and when you see teams making splash plays like that, usually it should garner your attention and you should try to read between the lines. When reading between the lines though on this one, it seemed more of a discredit to DeAndre Hopkins and his relationship with the organization, as opposed to the Houston Texans actually believing in the talent and potential of David Johnson. But that's neither here or there. We need to discuss what his potential opportunity is. The sky is really the limit. For starters, losing DeAndre Hopkins is not only going to impact the target distribution for the receivers, the Houston Texans may be throwing to the running back position more than they have in recent years. Never a team that actually targeted the running back position heavily, so that's definitely a sign I look for David Johnson to potentially point in the right direction. The competition behind him, that being Duke Johnson, while capable, it almost seems as though no coaching staff in the entire league believes that this player can handle any fair amount of volume. So his threat to taking away a workhorse type of role from David Johnson not only would be silly because of the amount of money David Johnson is making, but from what we've seen, it doesn't look like the team even feels that's a potential option. Then you have to look at the other side. This is a running back who has proven to be inefficient ever since he has been recovering and dealing with nagging injuries, and it almost appears as though he is a shell of his former self, and we've seen time and time again, volume is not always going to get it done for fantasy football. Carlos Hyde on that same team a season ago had 245 attempts on the ground, but still was virtually irrelevant for fantasy. Well, that's some of the risk you'll have to take. I usually like to back my players and picks based on volume as opposed to efficiency, and David Johnson, he's going to get the volume. RB21 is Leonard Fournette, and he appears to be the player that everybody in the fantasy community is on the same page with him being in a void. We are no different than that because we are also avoiding Leonard Fournette, and it all comes down to risk. First off, he is a significant injury risk to your team, missing 11 games in his first 2 seasons, and if that were the only obstacle in his way, I would still consider drafting him where he's currently going. However, he has proven to be an inefficient running back. But still, inefficiency has never been the sole reason for me to strictly avoid a player, especially at the running back position. They can have their ups and downs, but then you also have to factor in, this team has made it very clear they almost want nothing to do with Leonard Fournette. He's on the final year of his contract, and quite possibly, they could be hoping he either gets injured or reverts back to his inefficient ways, maybe to save a couple bucks here and there. But it seems like this offense and coaching staff in general are still searching for their identity, and it's hard to imagine Leonard Fournette is going to be a leader or a front runner in any team's offensive identity. To his credit, everything that he showed us last year is exactly what we would want from a pick at this stage of the draft. Heavy volume, good efficiency, excellent usage in the receiving game. There are just too many factors that point to potential risk in so many ways that he could potentially bust that typically I'm avoiding him because there's still a lot of talent at the running back position in this range. The final running back in this tier is Le'Veon Bell, coming in at RB22, and initially to start the offseason, I was a bit higher on Le'Veon Bell, but it seems as more time passes, I am becoming lower and lower on Le'Veon Bell, and the main factor that's contributing to that is that I don't really see him having a ceiling this year. When it comes to volume and workload, between Le'Veon Bell and David Montgomery, those two are probably the biggest bang for your buck. But I will sound crazy for saying this, but I actually think that the offense for the Chicago Bears has a lot more upside, at least for this season, than the offense of the New York Jets. It can be a bit silly to put too much weight on a schedule before the season starts, especially with so many unknown factors, but if you look at who the New York Jets are going to be facing this year, there shouldn't be a lot of upside for this offense. Le'Veon Bell proved in a losing system last year, he's not going to be able to produce. Despite having a massive amount of volume, it never really translated to fantasy points. I definitely see that as a potential outcome once again this year. And while he may have a decently solid floor, I just don't see him having the upside to ever reach top 5. And even for him to potentially be an RB1, it would take a lot of things going in his direction. But guys, that's going to do it for the third tier of the running back rankings. Let us know which players you are higher or lower on in the comment section down below. If you want access to all of our tier-based rankings, player breakdowns, risk ratings, consistency charts, and more, check the link in the description box below. Go to our website, consider signing up today. If you did enjoy this video, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.